Hey everybody, happy opening day, or I guess by the time you're watching this, it'll be happy day off after opening day. Happy sad day off after opening day. But anyway, we're talking about a Cubs opening day victory over the Texas Rangers. They beat Texas 12-4. Sean, what a great game. It was a really satisfying way to kick off the season for the Cubs after kind of a blah off season.
Yeah, it was like they were trying to make up for all the runs they didn't score in their last 2, 3 games of the season. So that was great to see. But I was like, man, if we could have just gotten like a couple of those pushed towards last year, it would have been great. But yeah, obviously you can't complain when your team puts up 12 runs. That's a huge win for the Cubs. I mean, not necessarily huge in the sense of where they're going, but it was nice to see the offense kind of clicking. As we talked about in the Javier Baez video that you guys probably, if you haven't checked out yet, please do. Obviously, the offense kind of wasn't going until Baez hit that home run, and then it felt like everything kind of just opened up. The Cubs figured things out, and suddenly runs were flying up on the board. So it was good to see. Good first game of the season, because obviously if the Cubs had lost like 2-0 in this game, I think people would have logged out of Twitter and thrown computers out windows. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people would have been losing their minds, and that's totally okay. However you want to deal with it. But you mentioned what a great game they had. Chris Bryant was quoted after the game by Jordan Bastian, the MLB.com reporter. Bryant said, "I think that was offensively better than any game we had last year." Now that sounds like hyperbole, but Jordan actually, I think, dug this up. The Cubs had not had a game where they, as a team, scored 12 plus runs, had 25 plus total bases, and 8 plus walks since September 13th of 2017. So offensively, that was better than any game they had last year by that measure.
yeah, that's great numbers there. I one thing I didn't realize too until someone said the stat in the preseason. I didn't realize how many home runs Baez had hit off of off speed pitches. I didn't know he led the league last year in home runs off speed pitches. So that was interesting too. But yeah, I mean, there's not too many things you can be upset about with this offensive performance and the Cubs in general. I mean, a couple hiccups here and there, but when has that ever never it's never been smooth sailing for the Cubs since 2016. So you just kind of take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, there's not too many things to pick at for this game. It was a good all around effort here from the Cubs.
Right. Yeah. Like you brought up Baez. He hit 2 home runs. We actually have a totally different video on that. So after you're done with this one, go check out that video. We talk exclusively about Javi Baez, but other things of note, Chris Bryant hit a home run. There really just are too many notes on the offensive end to even discuss all of them. But I wanted to focus on Mark Zagunis for a minute. He came up with a big RBI double in a situation that extended that that scoring in that 5th inning. Just a really good at bat. Hustled into second for a double. I mean, it basically had to be busting it the whole way. He really rewarded Joe Maddon's faith by coming up with that. I think there were a lot of fans who it was day one and they're already complaining about the lineup. Like, why isn't Schwarber in there? And it's like, well, it's because Schwarber struggles with left-handed pitching. And if you're not going to put Zagunis in the lineup against Mike Minor, why is he even on the roster? So,
Yeah.
I actually, if you look at the Talking Cubs show Twitter account, I had put out a couple days ago a projected lineup, and people were like, "You got Zagunis out there?" And actually, I nailed every single player at the right positions, but just slightly out of order. So,
Yeah.
pat myself on the back a little bit for knocking down the opening day lineup for Joe Maddon.
I was going to give you kudos for it too, because you pretty much nailed it. But yeah, I talked about it on Locked on Cubs too as well. Obviously, some people I think Jordan Bastian had Schwarber in the lineup for his projected lineup. People were asking me questions on Twitter about it too. Zagunis, I mean, that this is the time you want Zagunis in that lineup. But you're not super confident in Schwarber yet, and Mike Minor's a guy that I don't know if that's really a great matchup for Schwarber. For Zagunis, I mean, obviously hits lefties extremely well, and he rewarded the Cubs today with a hit. And I mean, if you put him on the roster for a reason. He's not just there because you think Ian Happ isn't good, and obviously that's not the case either. But he has a role, and it's to hit against left-handed hitters, and that's what he did today. So kudos to Joe Maddon for having the goal to put him in there over Schwarber, even though it's opening day. And they do, obviously Cubs fans want to see their favorite players in there. And of course, Schwarber's one of people's favorite players to watch. But yeah, you got to play matchups, and that was the right time to do that, especially when you've got a DH. Why not put Zagunis in there and see what he can do?
Right, and I think Schwarber actually ended up having more plate appearances in the game than
He did.
Zagunis did. Yeah, Zagunis was 1 for 2 with his RBA double. They got Mike Minor out of the game, and then the next time that spot came up, here comes Schwarber. He ends up getting 3 plate appearances. He also hits, I think, an RBI double. So yeah, people were complaining about nothing. It made more sense to put Zagunis in there to get him those plate appearances so he can show you what the reason is that he's on the roster and that he is a useful player. He's not a superstar by any stretch, but I think there's been a lot of undervaluing among fans and kind of commentators because he's just kind of the guy stealing Ian Happ's spot. But I hope that continues for him. I hope he continues to get more time against lefties. Speaking of lefties, though, Jon Lester, 6 solid innings. He walked 2. He only struck out 3, but he gave up 2 earned runs. Both of those came on 1 swing. It was an Elvis Andrus home run. So a solid game from Jon Lester. He didn't have that 92-mile-an-hour velocity on the fastball. He was more 88 to 90. But we know it, from the past, he kind of starts out usually late March, early April at that kind of range and usually builds up. So good signs from Jon Lester so far from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the 2-run home run is, it is what it is. That's going to happen from time to time. But obviously, it didn't affect him because he continued to go through this game and pitch well. And that's what you see from Jon Lester. He's just a gamer. He's every bit of the word gamer. He just goes out there and performs, and he does what he can, and he grinds through at bat sometimes when he has to when he's up on the mound. But obviously, Lester, there's not much to really get upset about with him. He located. He looked strong. He wasn't walking a ton of guys. It's a typical Jon Lester start. I'll accept it. If the Cubs are going to be able to score 12 runs a game, obviously I can live with a 2-run home run. But obviously, a little overreaction there. I don't think the Cubs are going to do that every game. But I think this offense has potential to lead the league in runs scored if they're going to have guys hitting all over with Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez kind of sitting in the middle of the lineup.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's reasonable to expect 12 runs per game on average. Maybe more like 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
One last note on the pitching side from opening day. Pedro Strop came in the 9th with a 12-2 lead. At the time, I thought, okay, this makes sense. He only pitched that 1 inning after the hamstring injury against the Red Sox. So a 12-2 game is kind of a perfect opportunity to give him an extra warm-up going into, at that point, the real games, beyond, because with a 10-run lead, you weren't worried about this one. He came out after 2 batters. At that point, I was kind of half paying attention. So I thought, it actually was 2 outs. It was 3 batters. And I thought maybe they have him on a pitch count coming out of this game. But then when I checked the box score, Strop got 2 outs. He gave up, I think, a single and only threw 10 pitches. So is this just Joe Madden micromanaging to death at the end of a 12-2, what ended up being a 12-4 ball game? Because, unless there's like a serious reason why Pedro Strop couldn't go beyond 10 pitches to get the final out, I have no idea why you're burning Mike Montgomery in this game.
Yeah, that seemed weird. I didn't really understand that. I didn't obviously get to watch the majority of this game because I was at work. But when I was looking at the box score afterwards, I was kind of like, why did they do that? And especially when I saw the pitch count, it doesn't really make any sense. As you and I were kind of talking before we got started here, obviously, with the game being so close to being over, the majority of the people in the press box weren't there to really kind of see all that happen and unfold. So we don't really have any answers on it. I'm assuming it was probably just the Cubs being precautious for some reason, but I mean, I don't really know. At that point, what's the point? And then obviously using Montgomery, it's not like he just threw a couple pitches and got a guy out. He obviously gave up that home run and had to kind of work a little bit to get that last out. Kind of weird, especially when you've got the game in hand. I mean, you could have thrown. I mean, why isn't Tyler Chatwood in this game at this point? This seems like the most Chatwoody moment ever. But I mean, I guess if you want to use him as a starter at some point, whatever. But yeah, it just none of it made sense. If I had to guess, I can't imagine Joe Madden just decided to pull him. There has to be some type of reason. I'm just hoping we're not going to get news tomorrow that the Cubs just all of a sudden decided to put Pedro Strop on the IR and ruin everyone's fun for opening day. But it's strange. Definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a Cubs opening day or a big Cubs game discussion without a moment where I have to question something Joe Madden did. That doesn't matter at all, really. So I had to bring that up. But yeah, it was one of those like, man, what are you doing? Kind of
Right.
moments. Like, he's thrown 10 pitches. Just let him get that final out. It reminds me of a couple years ago. I think it was maybe opening day at Wrigley Field or Cubs home opener. They're playing against the Phillies, and Ryan Sandberg was managing the Phillies, and it was like 2 outs in the ninth inning, and they had like a 6-1 lead or something stupid like that. And he came out and switched pitchers. Um, and everyone was kind of just like, is he kind of jabbing at the Cubs right now? Uh, this obviously, I don't think Joe Madden has any reason to take a dig at the Rangers by doing that, but still, Joe's just going to be Joe, I guess. I don't want to hover too long on this, so send along your thoughts. Did you see a reason that we're totally missing on why Pedro Strop had to come out of the game after 10 pitches, or was it just Joe Madden micromanaging like he loves to do? What else did you think was interesting about opening day? We didn't even get to it, but Colton Wong hit 2 home runs for the Cardinals on opening day. That was big, but the Brewers beat the Cardinals. Did you see how that game ended?
Yeah, that Lorenzo Kane grab at the end of the game. Holy crap, that was cool.
Yeah, that was an awesome moment. I know people watching this probably are not big fans of rooting for the Brewers, but I guess if there's one team you can root for the Brewers, it's against the Cardinals.
Right.
That was if you're a baseball fan, you got to love that.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, that's probably one of the most exciting plays in baseball, especially when you factor in the moment being 2 outs, and that would have tied the game up if it had left the yard. I mean, that was just cool. I don't know if it looked like it was going to maybe hit the wall, or if it did, it was just going to just clear. But
Yeah, I thought the same thing on just like on the initial view. Looked like, okay, maybe it was gonna hit the wall, but when I watched the slow motion replay, the really close up one, it was
yeah,
going over.
ooh,
So
so that even makes it
yeah,
cooler.
yeah, very cool. Well, anyway, let us know what you guys think. What are you excited about for the rest of the season? Did opening day kind of calm any of your fears about the Cubs from the off season or from spring training? Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Click the subscribe button, and we will talk to you again later.